Welcome to our inaugural podcast of Peers Over Beers. Your hosts, Michael Sandoval, me, and Chris Detzel. In our inaugural podcast, we'll start off with Chris. Chris is going to talk us through a little bit about his new community over at Imperva. We're also going to discuss this idea of the importance of engagement automation in a community, engagement overall. A little mini case study of our effort that we did at Rexel with regards to engagement automation. And you're going to hear an interruption somewhere about halfway. That was the public radio canvasser coming to my house. Apparently I forgot them this past year. Don't worry. Yes, I gave. All coming up next. I just wanted to make sure I got the name of the beer correct.
Of yours?
Yeah, it's called, I think it was number 21.
Oh, yeah. Peers over beers.
You got it. It's from Louisville.
I was thinking that too. That's why I brought a beer. I was like, we got to talk about
what
beer we're drinking.
It's called Old Town Brew House Double Vision. Okay, so we're recording. My name is Michael Sandoval.
And I'm Chris Detzel. Excellent.
Oh, go ahead and have a seat. Is it better standing?
I like to stand, but yeah, it's fine. No, I got it.
That's all right, because I can do...
No, that's fine.
I can lift it higher.
I know.
So you can. It's quite right. So once again, my name is Michael Sandoval.
And I'm Chris Detzel.
Well, hello, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. So this is a very interesting point in how we got to the discussion. We were just having a beer, and we thought, hey, we should probably record our conversations because they're pretty good.
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, and mostly on the community side. And so we thought, well, hey, how about peers over a beer? Wouldn't that be kind of fun? So we are having a beer, and this one is, that's why I had to go look it up, Old Town Brew House from Louisville, Texas. It's an IPA. Pretty good, eh?
It's excellent. Cheers.
So with that, we were already having the discussion before we started recording. But Chris was telling me, actually, I'll let you, Chris. Tell me, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm building or have built an online community for a cybersecurity software company called Imperva.
So why did they want one?
Yeah, I think that it's a good question. The biggest reason is to kind of think about a few things. Is retention, and then also case deflection. So we had a big issue with support not being able to answer cases in a timely manner. So, the thought was, well, if we can answer some of those easier questions online and have customers really answer some of those, and share their experiences with the products, then what better? So I think that was kind of the initial thought around.
You had come on, they had already made that decision, right? That they wanted to do something community-ish?
Well, if you want to know the real story the big story is that, so yes and no. The story I got was, so about a year ago, I talked to somebody that I knew, and she was like, hey, look, there's this job description that needed a community, and we needed a community manager, and I thought of you. And so they just started a customer success organization. The company's been around since 2002, I believe. And so they're like, well, we also need a community manager. And she went after it. And
they thought of you specifically?
One person did, yeah.
Well, look at your
specifically. So, yeah, no, it was a nice gesture. And so they thought, when I think of customer success, I think of retention, and I also think of case deflection. So how do we help our customers get the answers that they need quickly? And community kind of came to their mind. And so I really started to develop the strategy, roadmap, et cetera. And yeah.
So you said they had a problem with it already. Obviously something was getting to the top echelon of the company saying you're having a customer service problem.
Yeah, a retention problem.
So the customers were bolting.
That's right.
Interesting. And so you came in and thought, I
I know how to do this.
Yeah.
Let's go do a plan. So you recently launched it, didn't you?
Yeah. So, we decided to go with a vendor back in April of 2019, and then we just recently launched October 14th. So it's ready to go.
Which vendor did you use?
We used a company called Higher Logic.
What'd you think of them?
Something I really liked about Higher Logic is they have this great marketing. So before you and I worked together, we worked with a company called Intelligent. What they didn't have was kind of this engagement piece of customers. So when customers create a login and start looking at the content, there was really not built in anyways, some engagement type things. They have what they call automation rules. So you can set up different types of personalization and different types of marketing things that you can do within the platform. And that really is what sold me, to be honest. So, they can do a lot of things. And so that's basically what I was sold on.
So that's actually interesting because you talked about Intelligent. So just between us, I've worked with Jive, Intelligent. I've done also the open source stuff like Joomla. I even had a Joomla to Intelligent conversion one time. What else have I worked with? Well, of course, all the other free open source stuff. But now with you have Higher Logic as an example. Oh, and of course, we both have Microsoft experience. We've both used Yammer
and
to infinitum. So it gives us a pretty good idea about all the vendors we know.
Slack. I've used that quite a lot.
We've all used them all. So what something about the engagement piece, because I remember you and I were working together. One of the biggest things we were talking about was this is how you kickstart a community. You have to start engagement. If you don't get engagement up and going, shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah. I remember something that you said to me once is, my strength is, I think, really getting people excited about community, getting people excited about what we're doing and what the organization's doing. And, that is my strength. And it's a lot of fun to go do it because I truly believe in the mission and everything else. And one of the things that we did was, you were like, Chris, we need to get people on the community. We need to get them on.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we do. So I started talking and it was a big company that we're at, or Rexel. And so I started talking to people in Canada and France and Germany and started thinking about, what are some ways that we can get people on the community. And, to make this, I guess, kind of short, but I found a partner in Canada. This guy, I'll just say his first name is Rick. Rick, right?
Yep. His name is Rick. Yep.
He was on board. He was like, yeah, Chris, let's go do it. And so we developed this thing called the Black Belt Program. And the Black Belt Program really allowed us to engage internal people and then also get their customers to engage in the community at first. So I sort of got it within 3 months, we probably had over 2,000 people that joined the community, what we call the grid. It's the grid at Rexel.com. Yeah. And then over another several months, we had close over 4,000 people, new people, not just employees, but just this was customers that joined the community. And so I did my job. I thought, I was like, hell yeah. I got 4,000 people in this community. It's amazing.
Yeah. Eat that, Mike.
Yeah. Eat it, Mike. And then he stressed me out way more. And I was so frustrated with this.
I remember this.
and I was clueless, to be honest. And he goes, all right, well, that's great. So what are you going to do with those 4,000 people? I go, what do you mean? Because I don't see them posting and they're not doing anything else. I mean, what are you going to do with those people? I was like, I don't know. And so, and maybe I could talk about it, but you probably say it a little bit better. But, Michael was like, well, there are some things we can do. But what he did was, instead of telling me the answer at first, he let me, he just said those things, what are you going to do about that? And then for like a day or two, he let me kind of just die over that. Like I was like, what am I going to do? Oh my God, like, and so after that, what'd you tell me?
Well, to give some context for those who don't know, so black belt program, so much like the word black belt is, right? It's this idea of stages that you take on, right? So it's kind of like what's it called? Like a not chicken and egg, but carrot and stick thing. So the whole goal was to get a black belt, and there were levels to each of those things. And part of this was on a larger goal around adoption, right? So we're doing e-commerce adoption. And one of those steps was to do community, right? So, and it was a big deal. So I think one of the things that folks don't understand is that, we'll talk about this a bit later, but how do you go deep into the enterprise? Like, how do you get people to really drive the community piece? And you're right. So going back to what you've done, you were able to sell to this gentleman, the business in Canada, that community can be of value. And he added that as a part of a step into the black belt. So to do that, they had to do certain things, right? And one of them was sign up, create an account. But the most important thing was they had to ask one of their customers to go and create an account and ask a question, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that was actually pretty impressive. That's odd because I have a doorbell and I rarely get anybody in the doorbell. So that's the thing when you're actually doing a podcast at your home. But to that, because they were trying to get their black belt, they did the activity. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Chris. So we were getting into this question about. Hold on. Let me go to the last part. It was about. You were getting started.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. Black belt. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, so kind of got me into it. So Chris, you were so just before we were interrupted. Sorry about the interruption. So I think we had a little bit of recap of what the black belt program was, but the whole cool thing about it was. You could get for every person they signed up internally, they had to sign up a customer, and so we had both internal and external customers show up. So, and because it was a thing they had to do to get their black belt, which was an incentive, we had a lot of good signups, which is a good part. So that was a great part. And we were talking about
it was really good.
I remember the question was, just because we have 4,000 people and no one participating, a community does not one make.
Yeah, I think we should back up slightly. So the Black Belt program was part of digital adoption. So in a company that we were pushing digital adoption, and most of it was e-commerce, and part of that Black Belt program was the community. So there were 7 belts. 2 of those belts were for community specifically, right? So just kind of back up.
No, it's really good because later I want to get into this idea of adoption.
Yeah.
Because I do think the community does play a big part in it.
Yeah.
And I know you have some really good experience about it. So tell me, how did you, because I remember this being on a whiteboard. We were talking pretty deep,
I know
right?
exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, remember we were getting into, and this started to get this whole idea about how do you activate new people to the community, right? We were talking about this idea of, one was around email campaigning,
right?
Getting them activated. So we started talking about, well, how do we know when somebody's signed up? How well are we at kind of easing them into making it very easy to do the one thing? And we talked about the one thing.
What are those?
What was the
that
one thing that we could get them to do? And it had to be something that was low barrier.
Profile pic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first thing, right? We said what it was the lowest barrier thing we could get them to do.
Yeah.
Update their profile. And then, so that was one thing, but then we looked at data, right? So we said, when, let's not just look at these first 4K people. How many have we signed up since then? And when was our last date of activity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we started going to this whole question about, oh shit, how do we get them to do the first thing, right? And that just led us into a whole path about activation.
A whole path. It was, and That's what we wanted to create, because the platform at the time wouldn't do those things. It didn't have what I call, automation rules or those kinds of things where you can actually set that up and do that. And so we had to kind of draw that out on a whiteboard and say, what is the first thing we want to do? And we wanted them to create a profile pic, and that led us down to, great. If a customer, then we started thinking about what else, are some of the things that we wanted to do. And that was more of, well, we want them to subscribe to content. So if they subscribe to specific forums or content, then they're emailed, about whatever, if somebody posts or whatever about, that topic or that specific content. And then, then we started getting even more deeper about, well, if a customer isn't logged in within X number of days, so 30 days, then send them an email that says, hey, have you, done these things? Do these 2 or 3 things, right? And
Yeah,
so,
no, I too bad this is not like an actual video piece, because I think it would be great to add this as part of the add-on to the podcast, right? Which is, we had this idea about a 3-stage way of customer activation.
Yeah.
And they were triggered by milestones. So the first milestone was profile pic.
Yep.
And you're right. The second milestone was subscribe to content.
Yep.
And then
Was it post or?
And I think we had some data that said if they did one activity, I think the minor one was profile, then there was, and I have to look at the percentage, it was a percentage of active, they did something afterwards, right? So the whole task was to get them back to go do something.
Yeah.
And if we just did one extra step, we knew they were just going to get deeper. So I think the third step was their first post.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Asking their first post. And we even toyed around, do we have them ask? Do they have them give us their thought? What are they doing for the day? Right? We had a lot of that question about what is the right way to ask for the first post. So we had this 3-step stage, and then we put timelines, right? So if they didn't do this between the first time they hooked up or came in.
I think I still have that on a picture somewhere.
It was pretty, actually it was pretty good.
It was funny because I remember when Michael put this on he would always put it on this window and put on a marker. Put this erasable marker on the window, and he put it out there, and then it took me probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks I looked at it, I wrote it down, but then I could recite it. I knew exactly what we had to go do.
What stage we were in, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the hard part, because we had to actually get it developed. We had this magician of a developer that can do some crazy shit. Yep. And so we'd say, hey, we need this. I'm not saying he didn't struggle at times to kind of figure out what that was, but you just go in there and it might take him a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden, voila.
Yeah, you just you did the right jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So kind of pulling back to what you're doing right now. So knowing that was an experience, right? So almost in some way, we could almost talk to those who listen, like, well, how, almost the feedback is, what is your community's thing, right? And in some way, we look at the data.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at the data, when did they log in? What was their first thing they did as an activity member, right? That's how we started looking at some stuff. Yep. And I think the way you solved it was, what was the lowest barrier thing? So for our community, we were using Telligent, that uploading or creating a profile pic was pretty easy. And I think we also looked at some other data too. So we looked at other communities and found out that, I think we even looked at LinkedIn about how they did profile build, which was this kind of scaling.
That's right.
Looking at a thermometer, you're 20% through, 30% through. So there was some good case study about how we could go figure out how to do it, right? So we kind of leaned on that, and that's how we came across it.
I want so not to to kind of completely get this off, but I do want to talk about, some vendors make that easier than others.
Yeah,
right?
so this is what was going back to the beginning, which was, and we're not endorsed by these guys. We're just talking about experience, right?
Yeah.
So what was in this product that made that easier?
Well, it was what they call the automation rules, right? So that, from my understanding, was not built in Telligent. You have to have a developer just go in there and develop it and do all kinds of crazy shit, and it takes them 3 to 5 months to potentially do it. The nice thing about, so the nice thing about, let's say, Higher Logic, for example, is they have most of that built in. And what they don't have built in, you can find a developer or a company that I found that can develop through JavaScript, very simple, kind of this, hey, you're 50% there, you're 60% there, you're 70% there, and it's relatively cheap, to get them to do something like that.
So it's like a plugin you could put in to do some of these things?
It's sort of a plugin, but they use the automation rules that are already there, right? So they just make it
API.
No. So it's
just a script.
Just a script, a JavaScript, right?
Okay.
That uses the already built-in functionality of Higher Logic to say, for example, if a customer hasn't built a profile or hasn't put a pic or hasn't put or subscribed to certain content, you could put those things into that logic and say, okay, well, great, you're 10% there. You now done your profile. Now you need to subscribe to content. Do these 5 things. And then you can keep adding to those 5 things. So it's kind of, you have to make it, look the way you want to make it look. But it's a lot easier than having, a hardcore developer going in there and truly developing it. So a lot of that stuff is built in. And so that was my draw to that company in a big way, because I remember what you said about engagement. I could today easily get 2,000 people logged into our community. Today I have 300 plus people logged into the community since October. It's only 3 weeks. That's the easy part for me.
No, that's not bad.
It's great, but how do I engage those people, right? Not all of those are customers. So some of them are employees but I would say, it's way over half. So let's say 3/4 are employees, and then the other 1/4, which is a pretty big amount. So it's 350, by the way, is the number. But another 1/4, there's actually customers without doing any marketing stuff.
And before I go off, because it kind of came to my head, did you do any type of, when you launch your community, and then we'll go back to this idea of activation, because that sounds pretty germane to the conversation, right? This, how do you customers, when they come in, how do you get them to engage, right? This is the idea of engagement, right?
There's a whole plan around it. That's a strategy in itself, by the way, Michael. It's not as he would tell me, actually. There's a lot of tactics you can do, Chris. That's a tactic, not a strategy.
That's a tactic, not a strategy. Yeah, exactly correct.
I remember that over and over. It's like, well, Chris, those are pretty good tactics. But let's think about the overall strategy and put those tactics on the roadmap.
Oh my God, I can hear myself.
Oh my God, so can I.
Well, actually, let's go in before my brain is going in a couple of places. So going back to this idea of automation that you were in, what did you, so do you obviously put these rules in place, or have you put these in place yet?
I am putting them in place. Some are already in place, and then over time we'll put more in place.
And when you kickstarted, this is going back to my brain's in a couple places. So when you kickstarted, did you do a launch, or you said you didn't put any marketing behind it? So how did you get folks to?
Well, Michael, that's a long story, and if you want to hear that story, I can tell you. I'll make it as short as possible.
Well, how about we do this? How about let's leave that for another note, because I think that's an important thing about launching.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. It's a big one.
Because I agree that, because I think part of my philosophy was around, it's hard to launch something for which you do not have a party. I call it a party, right? And it's hard to get people to go to a party when no one's at the party.
Yeah, that's right.
So we'll talk about fair point.
I use that analogy. It's funny that I get that from Michael. Is who wants to go to a party that nobody's at? I've used that in some of the CEO staff meetings and also on some of the all hands meetings, all company meetings. And I say that all the time, but it works well. People laugh.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it is true. Especially in this community space, it's a party. You have to go. You don't want to just show up to nothing there. It's crazy.
No, I agree.
So how did you, I think we'll close up this session and then we'll kind of start another one, because I think we're coming up at around 20 minutes or so. So within these first 300 folks,
350. But
I'm sorry, didn't mean to undercut. Sorry. sorry. Fair point, 350. And to give some context, I mean, not to say that's any. So, for those who don't know, Rexel is a 13, depending on 14 billion, depending on where we are on Euro exchange. 2 billion, I think, Imperva.
Imperva, yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you context, so we're at the beginning, right?
That's right.
Have you seen any trends so far at the very beginning, the first 350, or are they coming in? Are they asking questions? Do they feel engaged? Do they?
Yeah, there's a few customers that when I say few, maybe 5 or 6 that they have some product specific questions. So Imperva has close to 18 different products. We could talk about that and trying to create a content plan and things like that over time. But yeah, there are people that are very interested more in talking to peers about how they're using the products and certain things that they did around that. So did that answer your question or?
Lightly, I mean, it was around how do they feel engaged? Are you going to this engagement and do you feel good? I mean, what's the first? I mean, I don't know. You're 1 month into the.
Not even a month. It's like 3+ weeks. A little over 3.
Oh, very good.
But yeah, I mean, when I think of engaged, I think of there's 2 or 3 people that I think are pretty engaged, but I think there's things I'm gonna have to do more to keep them engaged, and so that's the thing that I'm a little bit worried about, right? So is how do I continue this engagement piece, and so I've been thinking about that a lot.
Oh, well then let's carry that to the next conversation. How's that?
Great.
All right. So this ends our first session or first podcast. And I think the next theme is going to be around how do we get more folks in the adoption phase. Until then, this is Michael Sandoval.
Chris Detzel.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.